CJ Carr's Heisman buzz is loading, and tomorrow night against USC, we're going to find out if it's legit. Meanwhile, some Penn State fans think they could steal Marcus Freeman to replace James Franklin. It's not just wrong, it's delusional, but we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on today's mailbag.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the past 5 seasons. It is Friday, October 17th, so happy Friday to you, and thank you for getting your game weekend started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And real quick, I wanted to remind you to please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It helps us out a lot, and I really do appreciate it. We've got a great Friday mailbag on tap for you today with a packed lineup of questions heading into one of the biggest Notre Dame USC games in years. We're going to talk CJ Carr's Heisman chances, whether Notre Dame will finally solve its short yardage problem, and how USC missing 2 running backs affects the matchup. Plus, we're going to get into the recruiting fallout from James Franklin getting fired and some fun ones at the end. We have a whole lot to get to, so you know what? Let's dive right into it. We begin with a question from @ConnorCross17. If it continues at this pace, do you see CJ Carr as a Heisman Trophy contender? We're going to find out tomorrow night, because I do genuinely believe Saturday could be a Heisman moment for CJ Carr. Or it could come crashing down along with Notre Dame's playoff hopes if he does not play well. I believe so much of this game and this outcome is going to be decided on CJ Carr's shoulders. Fortunately for Carr, USC secondary is very bad, and I think Notre Dame should have a big game through the air so long as the weather permits. Full transparency, I am recording this on Wednesday night before I leave for South Bend, so maybe the forecast changes over the course of these next couple days here, but right now it's looking like rain and wind is in the forecast, and that is not ideal for a high-powered passing attack, but CJ Carr did play in the rain at the start of the year on the road against Miami, so maybe he's a little bit more used to it than Jane Mayava at USC. But even then, I expect CJ Carr to have a big game, and if he goes out there and he lights it up, he is absolutely going to be right there in the mix for the Heisman Trophy. Right now, the favorite to win it is Carson Beck at plus 300 on FanDuel, and then Ty Simpson, the quarterback at Alabama, is right behind him at plus 320, and then Fernando Mendoza is plus 430. But after those 3 guys, those 3 quarterbacks, there is a significant drop-off. And in total, 7 guys have better odds to win the Heisman than CJ Carr as we sit here today, and Carr is tied with 3 other quarterbacks. So he's got a real chance to do it, but he's going to need some things to go his way. He's going to have to win out for sure, and he's going to have a big game against USC because for as much as we hate to admit it, narrative is a big part of the award, and given the stage, given the magnitude of his position being the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, I think he has a real chance, but he's going to have to light it up on Saturday and continue to light it up the rest of the way. And he's probably going to need some losses ahead of him, like if Miami ends up winning out and then Carson Beck is right up there undefeated, knowing that Carson Beck beat CJ Carr at the start of the year, it probably would not be enough for Carr to actually win the award, but it certainly could be good enough for him to earn an invitation to New York City. And that alone would be a huge accomplishment for CJ Carr in his first year as the starting quarterback. All right, next up, we have 2 questions that are in a similar vein. So @MitchMattIrish asks, what do you think is a better solution for Notre Dame's short yardage struggles, a Kenny Minchey package or a modified Wildcat with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in the backfield without CJ Carr? And then I got a question from @JesseWarnke635. Do you think this is the week we finally see the 2-back set with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in short yardage to throw something at USC that they aren't ready for? Jesse, you must be watching or listening to the show all week because I've said multiple times, I think Notre Dame is going to break out 21 personnel in this game. We saw them do it against Ohio State in 2023, and they had a lot of success in part because Ohio State was not ready for it. And Notre Dame was basically doing it with 3 backs at the time. They had Audric Esme as their lead back, and then Jadarian Price was getting some real run as a redshirt freshman, and then Jeremiah Love had his breakout game as a true freshman getting in the mix as well. And Jeremiah Love had like 78 rushing yards against an Ohio State defense that was very strong against the run. And I think a lot of those lanes were opened up because Ohio State just didn't know where these guys were coming from. And it's always so funny. We always talk about 21 personnel in the offseason. It's like an interesting talking point. Notre Dame looked like they were going to run it a little bit more to start the year, and then it's been pretty much removed from the playbook in recent weeks. But we know whenever Notre Dame has these big games like this, they always throw in some new wrinkles. Against Texas A&M, it was the beginning of the Wildcat or the wild card, whatever you want to call it. Didn't work out as much as Notre Dame fans may have wanted in that game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some wrinkles in this game, and I think that wrinkle is going to be 21 personnel. Now, as for Matt's question, if you're going to swap out the quarterback, I think you bring in Tyler Buchner. I know that seems crazy, but they just did it on a fake punt last week, and we know how good he is running the ball from the quarterback spot because he's proven that. Notre Dame used him a lot in 2021, even though that feels like an eternity ago, right? But Tyler Buchner was coming in for specific packages late in the year in place of Jack Cohn, and the difference is, at the time, Tyler Buchner was the backup quarterback. I'm not sure how many reps he's getting with the first-team offense these days. I would guess very, very, very little. He's been on the scout team more often than not. But if Notre Dame wanted to implement this package, if they were like, all right, we're going to bring in Tyler Buchner to go out there, run the RPO, or at least just run the read option so he can either hand it off or run it himself, then they're going to give him some reps. But I think it's just a little bit different when you're bringing him in for these specific packages, whereas in 2021, he was getting reps with the ones consistently throughout camp and then throughout the regular season because he was the backup. He was one play away, whereas this would be sort of dropping him in a brand new situation. But still, he's a natural athlete. We've seen him do it before. I think he could handle it. But if you bring CJ Carr out of the game, the moment that happens, whether it be for Tyler Buchner, whether it be for Kenny Minchie, or whether you don't want to throw a quarterback in there at all and you just let Love and Price go out there, the moment that CJ Carr comes off the field, every single person on the opposing team, every single guy, every single coach they have there in the press box is going to be screaming that Carr is off the field and that they are going to be in the Wildcat, send the house. So if you do that, you are probably going to be running into a situation where they blitz 10, maybe they even blitz 11. So you have to be prepared to throw a pass off of that with Love or Price or whoever's out there. So you do put yourself at a bit of a disadvantage. As I've said before, I don't mind the Wildcat. I just think that they need to take CJ Carr and split him out as far as possible so it's just a 10-on-10 situation. And maybe they got to have Jeremiah Love throw the ball to a tight end on a pop pass or something just to keep him honest. But any of these options that we have just mentioned are much better than what they've been doing. So I'm open to anything at this point if it means Notre Dame is going to convert more on these 3rd and 4th and short situations. All right, next up, Ryan Dunn. With the run game being somewhat stymied against NC State, what are your expectations for the ground attack going forward, especially with Ashton Craig out, but tight end Cooper Flanagan potentially returning soon? I actually don't think we've talked much about Cooper Flanagan on the show this week. There's just been so many different topics with this USC game on Saturday. So yeah, apparently Cooper Flanagan is getting close to a return. He's listed as questionable, and the fact that he's even listed as questionable is shocking to me. Like, this guy ruptured his Achilles just over 8 months ago in this same calendar year because he did it on January 2nd in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. It was like in the first quarter of that game. I have never heard of a player, especially not a player who plays in the trenches, like at tight end, who could recover from an Achilles tear in just over 8 months. Normally, it takes at least a full year to come back from that, plus some extra time to get back to feeling 100%. And maybe Cooper Flanagan is going to shock me and produce. I just think it's highly unlikely. If they do bring him in, it'll probably just be for a couple plays and he'll block. But if we see him at all this season, it better not be in any more than 4 games because they should redshirt him no matter what, because there's no way he is anywhere near 100%, just 8 months removed from a very, very serious injury. So if the running game is going to get better, it's not going to be because of Cooper Flanagan. They need the offensive line to just step it up. The running game is never going to be bad considering the talent in that running back room with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. But in order for it to be elite, the offensive line has got to step their game up. They've been disappointing this season. Like, there's really no other way around it. We were talking about them as not only the strength of this team, but potentially one of the best units in all of college football. And they have not lived up to that. They haven't even come close to that. They were straight up awful in the first game against Miami, and they have been above average in about every game since then. Like, they've had their moments. There was a couple drives against Arkansas when they just moved the line forward and Notre Dame was running all over them. But they need to do that against every single team they play, even the good teams. And they certainly have not done that against the good teams just yet. They took a step forward against Texas A&M, but they were still allowing a lot of guys in the backfield. They had several tackles for loss allowed in that game. So this is not what we expected from this group, and it is certainly not the standard. So in order for Notre Dame's running game to improve, they're going to have to lean on guys like Billy Schrauth, Anthony Knapp, Emil Wagner, who have played a lot of college football by now. They have to step their game up, and they have yet to physically dominate an opponent. Maybe they'll do that on Saturday against USC. I know they've done it in the past, but anyone just assuming that's going to happen because it's USC and Notre Dame has done it before, I think that's just not the right thing to expect in this situation. Notre Dame could go out there and prove it, but they certainly have not done it yet. So I'm not counting on it on Saturday or really anytime soon. But really, the offensive line just has to step up. All right, this next question, last one on USC. G. Bellotti, how much will USC missing their top two running backs affect the game? Look, man, it's a big deal. King Miller is still very talented, but he's not as good as Wayman Jordan. He is a very talented player, was the top JUCO player in the country when he transferred over to USC. But it's not just about being without Wayman Jordan. If anything happens to King Miller, they are screwed. Like, they just don't have enough backs. They are one play away from being in big trouble at the running back position. They could bring in some walk-ons that maybe aren't as good as King Miller, but that could be a big deal. But I actually think you're going to see the biggest impact in the passing game because, look, Lincoln Riley's probably going to scheme up some stuff in the run game to create some free lanes, and King Miller is going to get some yards because they've got a good offensive line. Lincoln Riley is a great play caller, all that stuff. But they're going to have a running back in pass protection at some points in this game. And if Notre Dame can force them to be one-dimensional, I don't really expect a true freshman walk-on is going to be very good in pass protection. So if they force USC to pass over and over again, I think they're going to be able to get some pressure on the quarterback because that true freshman running back is not going to be able to withstand the constant pressure that I would expect Notre Dame to try to deploy to get after Maeva. And as I said earlier this week, King Miller caught Michigan by surprise because he rarely played leading into that game, but the surprise factor is gone. And now Notre Dame has a whole week to prepare and figure out how to attack him, and I think that gives the Irish a big advantage. And if the weather is bad, like, how secure will King Miller be with the ball? Miller is from Calabasas, California. If you're unfamiliar with Calabasas, it's like north of LA. It's where the Kardashians live. There's not a whole lot of adversity going on in Calabasas, and there is certainly not a whole lot of rain. There's really never rain in Los Angeles, although it did rain pretty hard this week. But I would imagine that King Miller has not played in the rain very often in his life. He's probably never played in adverse football conditions when it comes to weather. So if it's wet on Saturday, if it's windy, that could absolutely be a factor in this game. So keep an eye on that. Monitor his pass protection ability and monitor the weather because I think that could all impact USC at the running back position. All right, that's it for the USC game. Coming up next, we're going to talk about these ridiculous rumors connecting Marcus Freeman to the Penn State job. Stick around. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. So for Notre Dame, tight end Eli Raridon delivered for the Irish in their win over NC State. Raridon racked up a career high in receptions with 7 and receiving yards on Saturday, and he helped lead the Irish to a big win over the Wolfpack. When the pressure was on, Eli Raridon came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like Raridon delivers for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, next up, we have a question from @IrishRecoj3. Is Marcus Freeman a Notre Dame lifer, or are we going to hear his name in the mix for every big-time job opening? So throughout the week, I had several questions like this, and I think it all relates back to a report that came out on Monday from On3 Sports, and specifically their college football insider, Pete Nakos, or at least that's what they refer to him as over there on On3. So they came out with an article and a tweet accompanying the article that said that Penn State, quote, may take a run at Marcus Freeman to replace James Franklin. And I feel like the term clickbait is misused a lot these days. It's a way people try to dismiss different things, usually if it's negative about them. But this example is quite literally the definition of clickbait because there's nothing legitimate about it, right? He does not say that Kraft, the Penn State athletic director, is actually going to pursue Marcus Freeman, and he did not say that Marcus Freeman has any interest in the job. He's basically saying that the athletic director at Penn State, in one of the biggest college football programs in the country, is considering reaching out to one of the best coaches in college football about their job opening. No shit, dude. Like, why does that necessitate an article? He would be dumb to not consider Marcus Freeman. And I apologize for swearing, but it is Friday. It's the mailbag. We're a little loose here. And also, this is so ridiculous. Like, that was so annoying to me. But no, I don't think any Notre Dame fans have to worry about Marcus Freeman leaving Notre Dame for the Penn State job. As I've said multiple times before on this show, the only job in college football that I think Marcus Freeman would ever consider leaving Notre Dame for is his alma mater, Ohio State. I've explained my reasoning before. We don't have to go down that road. And at this point, I'm not even sure if he would be that interested in Ohio State, but I think, like many of us, like myself, our ties to our alma mater are really strong and they never really go away. And I feel like if Ohio State came calling and they pitched him on coming home and all that, he would at least consider it, right? But Freeman's name is going to come up with every single job opening because he's so highly coveted. And that is the price of having something that everyone else wants. He is a great coach. Of course, every other school around the country would love to have Marcus Freeman based on what he has done at Notre Dame in his first 3.5 years here. It'd be like if you dated a supermodel. Odds are she's going to get a lot of attention and she's going to have plenty of suitors. That's just part of the deal, okay? If you're dating a supermodel, you can't be shocked when other people are checking her out and they're looking at you. And if you're saying, well, in this instance, you're making Notre Dame look bad because you're comparing, in this case, you to the supermodel, don't sell yourself short, man. It's possible. Maybe this supermodel heard about the promotion that you got recently. She knows about the 6-leg parlay that you hit 5 months ago. She's not going to leave you. So it is apples to apples in this case. But in all seriousness, if and when Marcus Freeman leaves Notre Dame, I expect he'll make the jump to the NFL. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but considering Freeman is so young, he's not even 40 years old yet, and he is such a competitor, I don't expect him to stay in one place for 20 or 30 years. Hell, we all love Lou Holtz, right? He brought Notre Dame back to glory and all that, and even he couldn't stick around for 20 years. I believe that Marcus Freeman is 100% committed to bringing a national championship back to Notre Dame. And once he accomplishes that, I think he'll look to a new challenge, and I think that ultimate challenge will be in the NFL. Because, look, he was a very, very talented college football player, All-American, all that stuff, and then he went to the NFL, thought he was going to have a great career as a player, and then it got cut short because of a medical condition. I'm sure that part of him deep down would love to see what he could accomplish in the NFL. He couldn't do it as a player. Maybe he could do it as a coach. Again, it's not going to happen anytime soon. In Penn State, Just give me a break. Notre Dame is in such a better spot than Penn State right now in the short and long term. I mean, they're in such disarray. Their whole recruiting class is gone. They're going to have to completely rebuild. And yeah, they have a lot of money, but so does Notre Dame. He's one of the highest paid coaches in college football. His coaching staff is also very well paid. They have a brand new football facility. They have a top 5 recruiting class coming in. Like, Marcus Freeman has so much momentum. He has so much buy-in from the university. It would not be a lateral move if he went to Penn State. It would be going backwards. But I brought up the topic of Penn State's recruiting class. That actually leads me to my next question, which comes from @JimmyKelly4138. Now that James Franklin has been fired, can Notre Dame realistically flip or poach any of Penn State's committed recruits? Well, it's funny you asked that, Jimmy, because Notre Dame is actively working to flip a few of those guys. They can, and I expect they will end up landing at least one, maybe a couple of them. So 5-star running back Keeman Spell, he is in the class of 2027, number 9 player in the country, number 1 running back in that class. Guess where he's going to be this weekend? On campus in South Bend for the game against USC. He was Penn State's top prospect, one of the top players in the entire country, and he had already planned on visiting Notre Dame because you could tell he was sort of phasing out. He was like soft launching his decommitment from USC, and then as soon as Franklin got fired, he made it official, and Notre Dame gets the first crack at it. Now, there's plenty of other suitors. He's going to visit Georgia at some point, and it's going to be tough, but the fact that Notre Dame has been working on him for a long time means they have as good a chance as anyone of landing him in that class of 2027. But he is not the only commit that Notre Dame is going after. In the class of 2026, 4-star safety Matt Sieg is another name that Notre Dame might consider. Now, Matt is a defensive back, and Notre Dame appears to be set with 5 defensive backs in this class, but he's also a top 100 player in the country, and even though Notre Dame looks like they're all set in that class, Matt Sieg is good enough that if he wants to come, you take him and you figure out the rest later. There's also a 4-star wide receiver in the class of 2027, Khalil Taylor, who decommitted from Penn State a couple weeks ago, actually before James Franklin got fired, but he kind of saw the writing on the wall. And Notre Dame offered him back in the summer. He is considering Notre Dame going forward. I think they have more work to do on that one, but trust me, Notre Dame is absolutely trying to seize this opportunity. And it's not just about flipping the guys who are currently committed to Penn State or were committed to Penn State. As we've seen in this past cycle, Notre Dame was going up against Penn State in a lot of commitments, like Grayson McHugh. We all thought he was going to Penn State, ended up committing to Notre Dame. Joey O'Brien, another Pennsylvania product that at one point people thought he was going to Penn State. Notre Dame was able to secure his commitment. So that is a great spot for Notre Dame to be in, and it's yet another reason why Marcus Freeman is not leaving for Penn State, because he's already convinced all those guys who at one point were considering going to Penn State to come to Notre Dame because it is a much better job in this day and age. All right, next one. At Black Cypress Solutions, what are the chances Jadarian Price returns next season instead of going to the NFL? He looks like he has Doak Walker Award potential. A couple weeks ago, I was pretty hopeful, but at this point, I feel like there's little to no chance that Jadarian Price comes back to Notre Dame next year. And the reason I believe that is because Mel Kiper, the legendary draft analyst for ESPN, just released his latest big board, and he has got Jadarian Price ranked as the 3rd best running back in the class. Jeremiah Love is number 1, and he's also the number 2 player overall on Mel Kiper's big board. So he looks like he could be a top 5 pick. And the fact that Notre Dame has the number 1 and the number 3 running backs in this upcoming NFL draft is pretty crazy, but it's not really a surprise when you consider how well those guys have played this season. And if Jadarian Price is going to be the 3rd running back off the board, it just doesn't really make sense for him to come back. He's not going to be able to improve his stock all that much, and he would make more money in the NFL if he were drafted on like day 2 in the 2nd round or maybe early in the 3rd round. He would make more money in the NFL, and he could preserve his career a little bit longer. Obviously, I would love for him to come back, but his stock continues to soar because he's been playing so well, and the better he plays, the more likely he is going to the NFL draft. The good thing, though, for Notre Dame, they have some very talented running backs in the room behind those guys that are waiting their turn, like Aeneas Williams. We saw him flash as a true freshman. We have barely seen him this season because Jaywan Sider really likes to just lean on 2 running backs. But it's not just Aeneas Williams. There's Nolan James Jr., the freshman who's making all kinds of noise in fall camp. I think he's going to have a great career at Notre Dame. And then Kedron Young is going to come back from injury. We'll see how he does. And then Javian Osborne and Jonas Walton are going to be true freshmen next year. They have been lighting it up on the high school circuit. They're top 100 players, or at least borderline top 100. So the future of the Notre Dame room is in really good shape, even without Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And look, if they get Keeman Spellman, look out, right? They are going to be just fine at running back going forward. All right, this next question comes from Danny Waitula. With NIL and revenue pressures growing, should Notre Dame explore stadium naming rights and jersey sponsorships to stay competitive while remaining independent, even if it means pissing off the fan base? It might be necessary to compete with programs backed by billionaires like Oregon and Phil Knight or Michigan with Larry Ellison. So, considering Notre Dame doesn't even let players have their names on the back of their jerseys during the regular season, I highly doubt we're going to see a sponsor on the jersey anytime soon. I understand the premise of the question, and considering the influx of money in college football and now you've got private equity entering the equation, like there's more money in the sport than ever before. I just don't think Notre Dame is desperate right now, and they're just not in a position where they need to make these moves. They still don't have any sponsored logos in the stadium, and they continue to make that choice to not have any every single year, because I guarantee you, if they decided, hey, this year we're going to open it up, we're going to allow companies and brands to put their logos in Notre Dame Stadium, they could jack the price up for that so high, and they still would have so many suitors. And every single year, they decide they don't need that, which to me shows they aren't really in any real search for money at this point in time. And I think that the revenue sharing should actually help alleviate some of these costs, by the way, because they won't have to look for outside donors to fill out the roster and pay for all these different guys every single year. They can take it from their own pool of money, of which they have plenty. And lately, I've actually been wondering who donates the most money to the Notre Dame football program specifically. Like, we know a few of the big names affiliated with the university, like Tom Mendoza, obviously. Jimmy Dunn is always around. And there's a ton of others that I'm probably forgetting to name here. But, like, who's the top dog? Who is donating the most specifically to the football program? I don't know the answer. I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe you know. But I'm sure that Notre Dame is making a lot more money than we think. They just aren't quite as open about it as Phil Knight at Oregon. Like, I actually got the chance to go to Oregon and check out their facilities last year doing something for my job at Fox, and was with Dan Lanning, and I got to see like all their unbelievable facilities and everything they have going on, and they're actually building a new one, and it's like, it's all Phil Knight. It's all him, and they're so open about it, but you know what? Good for them. Notre Dame also has plenty of money. I just think it's coming from different people, and I feel like they don't need to be as open about it. But the point is, I don't think they're in a rush to do any of that because they aren't hurting for money. And if the other conferences, like the Big Ten, start making way more money than Notre Dame with their media rights deals or this private equity thing that is happening soon, then maybe Notre Dame will just join a conference, right? I think they would do that before they went to jersey logos or sponsored logos inside the stadium, because at that point, it would just be way easier for them to join the Big Ten, and they would make up so much more ground in just one decision than any of these other things they were talking about. Because even though it could be $10 million or $20 million, that's like pennies on the dollar now for what kind of money is involved in college football. It's crazy, but that's the reality of the situation as we sit here today. All right, let's land this plane with some fun. Coming up next, we're talking rivalry memories, future schedules, and the abomination that is officiating in college football. Today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you have probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. This isn't just another ED pill. It is a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get 300 bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. All right, here's my pick for Sunday. I'm taking the Dolphins plus 2.5 against the Browns. I know that the Dolphins have been a disaster this season, but you know who's been an even bigger disaster? The Cleveland Browns. Even though they are my team, they are a poverty franchise, and I think the Dolphins are going to cover 2.5 points against the Browns. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, we've got 3 more questions before we wrap it up here. This next one comes from Dalton Horn. Why don't we get live access to the replay booth during ACC-officiated Notre Dame games? So for those who don't know, ESPN and the ACC partnered on a pretty groundbreaking collaboration this year in which they actually broadcast the instant replay reviews during ACC games so you can hear the entire conversation going on between the people who are in the replay booth and the officials out there on the field. I believe that ESPN and Fox tested this out in UFL games, and they decided to make it a permanent thing on the broadcast only for ACC games. The reason Notre Dame hasn't done it yet is because all of their home games are on NBC, and this was a deal exclusively with ESPN and the ACC. I'm not sure if we'll see this kind of thing when Notre Dame travels to take on Pitt or Boston College later on in the year, because that would be an ACC home game. So I'm assuming they would do it. And so far, I've heard mixed reviews on the whole thing. But man, I would love to have heard the conversation that went down last week on that third down play when Anderson clearly dropped it on that third down. And after what felt like an hour-long review, they ended up upholding the call, which was truly one of the worst decisions I've ever seen on a play that was reviewed. It makes you wonder, like, what is the point of review in the first place? Because all they did in that game was stall the game action for about 10 minutes at least, or at least it certainly felt like it was 10 minutes, maybe even more, and they still got the call wrong. It was met with obvious disdain from the crowd and even people on Twitter like Terry McCauley, who's an ex-official, and ex-officials always defend their guys. He called it the worst decision he has seen all season long. So officiating is in a crisis state across college football. It's not just the ACC, although Notre Dame has gotten hosed by the ACC officials as of late. Like, if you look at the SEC, for example, John Bryce from Football Scoop explained this week on the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast that officials in the SEC get paid more than everyone else. In the Big Ten, I think is like right there with them. So in theory, the officials in the Big Ten and the SEC should be the best that college football has to offer. And yet SEC officials completely screwed Auburn last week in that game between Auburn and Georgia. And they also screwed Auburn in that game when they played Oklahoma as well. So much so that they wrote an apology after. And SEC officials were there for the Notre Dame Texas A&M game in the second week of the season, and they missed a blatant holding call on that 4th and goal on the last play of the game that might have changed the outcome of the game. Notre Dame didn't get an apology after that. Not that it would have changed anything, right? But look, officials in college football are really bad. And I understand it's a very difficult thing to do, but it has to be fixed in a hurry because, as I was talking about in the previous segment, there's way too much money involved in the sport now for them to still be this bad at one of the basic functions of the game. So I hope they get it right soon. I just am not very optimistic that they will. All right, this is a happier question. At Michael McG7, which future Notre Dame matchups are you most looking forward to on the schedule? You look ahead to next year. The game to start the season is definitely the one I'm most excited for. Season opener against Wisconsin in Lambeau to start the year. That's going to be awesome. Who knows if Luke Fickell is even going to be the coach at Wisconsin next year. Things are not looking great for him and the Badgers, but I really hope I can go to that. It's literally the one game played at an NFL stadium where I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like, I went to the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game back in 2021 when it was in Soldier Field, and it was fun to be in Chicago with all my friends, but I wish that they had just done a home and home, right? It would have been cooler to see Notre Dame play Wisconsin in Notre Dame Stadium and then go to Camp Randall. But Lambeau is really cool because it is the closest thing to a college stadium in the NFL. Like, there's some soul to Lambeau. There's history. There's tradition. The vibe around it is great. The people there are awesome. It's not corporate. It's not like going to Jerry World or Atlanta or any of those places. Like, it feels like a college atmosphere. So that's why I'm so excited about that one. Would love to go to that game. You look ahead to 2027, really nothing exciting right now on the books other than the return, or I guess the beginning of Clemson series is a true rivalry. But in 2028, Notre Dame is going to host Texas in Notre Dame Stadium. And I was at that game back in 2015. I was a sophomore at the time, season opener, and that was a special night. Not only did Notre Dame hammer Texas, that was one of the best tailgates I've ever been a part of. I remember all the Notre Dame students were in awe of the Texas students who made the trip up, and it was certainly the talk of the tailgate. Some of the sorority girls from Texas were getting a lot of attention in the tailgate lots that day. Let's just put it that way. But Notre Dame is also supposed to host Alabama and then play on the road at Texas in 2029. We'll see if that happens because even though the SEC decided that they're going to move to a 9-game conference schedule and each team has to play one Power 4 team out of conference every year, I don't know how that's going to affect Alabama and or Texas. So maybe they play one, maybe they end up playing both. I don't know, but that's still so far down the road. I could see something getting messed up there, and then Notre Dame plays Florida a couple years after that. So right now, it would be awesome. I mean, it'd be really hard for the team, right, playing Alabama and Texas at the start of the season. But I would highly encourage anyone to try to make the trip to Austin to see the game in Texas, or go to Tuscaloosa to play to see Notre Dame play Alabama, because I've been to Alabama twice. I've been to 2 games there. I was at the Alabama-LSU game in 2019. I mean, literally one of the best college football games ever. So much talent in that game. It's absurd. Like, all the guys that dominated in that game are now dominating in the NFL on Sundays. And I was also at a Kentucky-Alabama game back in 2016. Not nearly as much talent in that game, but it was such a fun time. It will probably hit a little bit different in 2030 compared to when I was 21 and in college, but still, it's an awesome experience, and I can't wait to go to that one a few years from now. All right, last one. We're going to go down memory lane with this one. At Nathan_Coleman 45. What are your favorite Notre Dame versus USC moments in your lifetime? There's so many. Right? And there weren't a lot when I was younger. It was all bad up until 2010, and that's the first one that comes to mind, when Notre Dame beat USC for the first time. Those two teams are not very good. The weather was bad in LA during the Coliseum for that one. Robert Hughes just kind of drives downfield. Notre Dame gets that touchdown late in the game. They beat USC, and even though USC was not at the peak of their powers, it was just so great to finally get them for one. So that stands out. I remember watching that in the living room with my dad, and then also 2012, when Notre Dame beat USC to clinch a spot in the national championship game. That was something I wasn't sure was ever going to be possible, and the fact that they did it against USC was just so incredible. Another goal line stand in that game, that was really memorable. I watched that game with my family and our neighbors, the Duns and also the Beards, if I recall correctly, but that was a great moment. So much like jumping for joy, so much hugging going on. And then 2015 definitely holds a special place in my heart. Notre Dame won that game. That was the Will Fuller, Adoree Jackson clap game, right? Well, one of my best friends from home, Will Ostertag, visited for that game. We had an absolute blast, and he passed away last fall. But I have a picture of us together that we took in the stands right after that game. It's right next to my desk. It brings a smile to my face every time I see it, so that's certainly up there. 2017, I've talked about this a million times on the podcast. That was my senior year of college. It was the most fun night I've ever had in Notre Dame Stadium up until the Indiana playoff game last year, which was an amazing environment. But Notre Dame just beat the crap out of USC. It was a perfect weather day in South Bend. They won 49-14, and Sam Darnold was the quarterback of USC. So that was a pretty good USC team, and Notre Dame just throttled them. So that was a blast. And then 2024, I was there in the Coliseum, and I watched Xavier Watts take it down the sideline, stare down USC, and punch Notre Dame's ticket to the college football playoff. So that was amazing. But I think my favorite USC memory is the next one, which I believe will be tomorrow night in Notre Dame Stadium. And I think that is a perfect way to wrap up today's mailbag. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day, and for tuning in all week long. It's been a huge week on the show leading up to the USC game. A lot of new people watching and listening. I really appreciate everyone who's joined the show this week. Before you head out, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast if you have not done it already. That way you don't miss any of our daily coverage on Notre Dame football. And if you enjoyed the show today, please give this video a like if you're watching on YouTube, or rate the podcast 5 stars and leave a review. I will not have an instant reaction show on Saturday night, obviously, because I'm going to be at the game in person. But we're going to try and go live Sunday night around 8 p.m. Eastern for a full reaction show once I'm back in LA, travel permitting, obviously, so long as I make it back on time. But this will be our third edition of Sunday Night Live, and so far it's been a lot of fun. So I hope you'll join us live on the Locked On Irish YouTube channel on Sunday night. Until then, enjoy the game and go Irish.